I raised my voice, questioning my husband through the phone. Today is my beloved daughter Rachel's wedding day. Beside me stood Rachel, clad in a pure white wedding dress. It's almost time for the guests to arrive, but my husband, son, and in-laws are nowhere to be seen. That's why I called my husband on speakerphone, intending to ask when they would arrive at the venue with Rachel. Just yesterday, there was a last-minute flight cancellation, and we got a super cheap deal. So we're at the Palm Springs Hot Springs right now, he said. I was dumbfounded by my husband's cheerful words. Does he realize how many miles it is from here to Palm Springs? And the wedding is about to start. It's our daughter's wedding, for goodness sake. The in-laws have always spoiled their eldest grandson without limit, treating their granddaughter with neglect. I had suspected they wouldn't be too enthusiastic about today's wedding, but to pull something like this is just outrageous. It's not worth talking about. I'm at a loss for words. Astonishment, disappointment, emptiness. A swirl of emotions fades in and out. I see. Have fun then, I said, and with that, I ended the call immediately. What a thing to do on the bright day of our daughter's wedding. My husband, her father, and my son, her brother, are beyond disappointing. Mom, we're going to start the ceremony now, Rachel said, smiling in her beautiful dress. It's okay, it's not like we didn't expect this. Leave it to me. My name is Anne. I'm a 50-year-old professional. I live with my husband, Tom, of the same age, our 24-year-old son, Mark, and 23-year-old Rachel. We reside in a major suburban city, and all family members are busy with their jobs. My parents live about an hour's drive away, but my in-laws are just a few minutes away on foot. When we got married, my husband argued that it would be easier to get support with raising children if we lived closer to one of our parents, so we ended up buying a house here. In fact, my husband assumed we would live together with his parents, but I opposed that, and we ended up living on our own. I had no intention of quitting my job, and indeed, balancing work and household duties was challenging. But living with the in-laws wouldn't have allowed us to maintain our family life as I wanted. To be honest, I always felt that the in-laws' house was like a fortress ruled by the stay-at-home mother-in-law. It was clear that becoming a daughter-in-law in that house would bring endless hardship. My father-in-law and mother-in-law hold somewhat outdated views, believing that women should devote themselves to home life and that the eldest son should be the most cherished. When I married their son without quitting my job, they frequently made snide remarks and incessantly pressured me to give birth to a boy. I was relieved from the bottom of my heart that we didn't live with them. About 6 months after our marriage, I became pregnant, and the joy of my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and husband was immense when they learned the baby was a boy. My mother-in-law sweetly said, "You have work, right? Don't worry, we'll take care of your baby." Despite having been relentlessly sarcastic about me working, her attitude changed unbelievably after giving birth. My mother-in-law visited our home daily, keenly caring for my son and staying for long hours, which meant I couldn't relax, sleep properly, or avoid feeling exhausted from all the stress. My mother-in-law was overly attached to my son and did little housework, leaving me to do various tasks even when I hadn't fully recovered. My mother-in-law was so attached to my son that she hardly did any housework when she came to our house, and I had to do a lot of things with my body that had not even fully recovered. I'd often thought that if I had to do all this work by myself, it would be easier to be alone with the baby from the beginning. But I was afraid to tell my mother-in-law that she was bothering me, and so I continued to do housework day after day in a state of bewilderment. My breast milk stopped prematurely, clearly due to sleep deprivation and stress. Initially, I was devastated because breastfeeding was a precious, undisturbed time with my baby. But then I shifted my mindset, seeing the convenience in it, especially since relying solely on breast milk would be a constraint when leaving the baby with others. It had been decided even before Mark's birth that he would be taken care of by my mother-in-law, and given her daily visits, I thought it would be easier to work than stay at home, so I took advantage of the situation. I returned to work 2 months postpartum. Having someone to leave the baby with was a relief. Finding daycare was tough, and the fees were significant. However, my mother-in-law was willing to take care of my son at a house within a close distance and for a reasonable gratuity. It was clear that this was a very good deal, so I was grateful to have my son in their care. However, I started feeling uncomfortable about it. My son spent his days at the in-laws, coming home only to sleep when I picked him up after work. My mother-in-law would often insist on keeping him longer, and even on my days off, she would come over, take him in her arms, and tell me to rest because she was there. It was clear how much she was fixated on my son, almost as if trying to take him away from me. This feeling was not unfounded, as I realized after giving birth to my daughter when Mark was 1 year and 10 months old. Upon returning to work, both children were left with the in-laws, where it was evident they were treated differently. My mother-in-law was devoted to Mark, while Rachel was often left alone in her crib, unnoticed. When I came to pick them up, my mother-in-law would cling to Mark but suggest taking Rachel home. She prioritized Mark's play over attending to Rachel's needs. This disparity wasn't just because Mark could talk or because Rachel was a baby. It was more profound than that. My in-laws and husband spoiled Mark as the precious boy, while Rachel was treated indifferently, only getting attention when being told to obey her brother. During sibling quarrels, Rachel was always the one scolded, regardless of the reason or fault. Mark's wants were prioritized, and if he desired something Rachel had, my in-laws would take it from her and give it to him. They revered Mark like a deity, imposing on Rachel the role of his subordinate. This has been true ever since our children were young, and it did not change at all as they grew older. Of course, I thought this way of raising my children was wrong, so I approached my husband many times. I wanted him to treat them both equally. I asked him to tell my in-laws about it, but my husband would not listen to me. He was unresponsive, insisting, "Mark is the eldest son, so it's natural." Raised as a pampered only child, my husband saw this favoritism as normal. He believed men should always be prioritized and women should be subservient. No matter how much I explained, he didn't understand, leaving me astonished at his steadfast beliefs. I had thought of Tom as a confident, dependable man who valued his family, which influenced my decision to marry him. However, it turned out that his confidence was not backed by effort, but by ungrounded pride, making him just a mama's boy. I regret not realizing this sooner. At one point, I tried to distance Mark and Rachel from the in-laws. I told them daycare was sufficient since it provided care until the end of the workday, and I actually enrolled the kids. But my husband contacted the daycare behind my back, saying his mother wanted to pick them up, which led to Mark being taken home by her, leaving Rachel at the daycare. This caused issues with the daycare, which eventually asked us to withdraw since we had alternative care arrangements. The same happened with the private after-school classes, which we could no longer use due to my mother-in-law's insistence on caring for Mark. I hoped things would improve as the children grew and could stay home alone, reducing visits to the in-laws. However, they continued to spoil Mark because they wanted to be with him, enticing him with sweet words and gifts, and painting me and Rachel as villains, solidifying their role as his allies. Growing up in this environment, Mark became greatly influenced by the in-laws and my husband. He would demand anything from them, and they would oblige while increasingly speaking to me and Rachel in a condescending manner. His demands were always in a commanding tone, and if not met, he would throw tantrums. If I refused Mark's request or scolded him, he would seek rescue from my husband and my in-laws. Eventually, Mark grew up without much job-seeking effort, entering the same company as my husband through connections. My husband boasted about arranging this with the CEO, but I was more concerned about Mark's ability to fulfill his job responsibilities. In stark contrast, my daughter Rachel started her career exploration in her third year of college, securing a job in her desired field after visiting various companies. Mark received luxury suits and shoes as graduation gifts from the in-laws. Rachel received nothing, not even a congratulatory word. I've always seen how hard Rachel worked, so I sincerely congratulated her, treated her to a nice meal, and bought her a bag for work. Rachel's effort and success deserved recognition. She seemed used to the in-laws' attitude by then, showing no concern for their treatment, but as a parent, I found it difficult to accept such discrimination. A few years after Rachel started working, she decided to marry a senior colleague. The young man who came to our house seemed kind and appeared to cherish Rachel. Their peaceful smiles assured me they would build a happy life together. The young couple had carefully planned their wedding, choosing a venue that met their desires within their budget. As a parent, I had little to do but offer help. Meanwhile, my husband, son, and in-laws showed little interest in Rachel's wedding. I wasn't privy to their communications, but Rachel's casual mention of having sent invitations indicated their typical lack of enthusiasm. It's disheartening that they showed such indifference to their family member's wedding. I often think I should have divorced sooner. Divorce is said to be difficult, and I hesitated to make such a significant change, but their behavior towards Rachel and her husband was disrespectful. At least I wanted to support Rachel in starting her new life happily. On the day of Rachel's wedding, the venue was exclusively booked for the day. Although the ceremony was in the afternoon, the bride and groom were busy with preparations for morning. I was in charge of welcoming guests, making arrangements, and greeting friends who were helping out. As the mother of the bride, it was only natural I wanted to do as much as possible, since the couple had managed everything so well on their own. Although I arrived early to get ready and familiarize myself with the venue, seeing my daughter in her stunning wedding dress first was a real perk. While I was busy yet joyful in my tasks, even when the time to accept guests was approaching quickly, my husband, son, and in-laws were still absent. They had no specific roles, so arriving with the other guests wouldn't have been a problem. However, as family members, I wish my husband and son could have been there to welcome the guests. Mom, Rachel approached me in her wedding dress in the dressing room area. Did Dad and the others arrive? They haven't. Should I call them? It was time for me to greet the guests. I wished he could act more parent-like on such a day. I took out my phone and called my husband, putting it on speaker so Rachel could hear. The ringback tone sounded, and I felt relieved that the call connected. Hello. Hey, where are you now? The ceremony is about to start. In Palm Springs. Huh. What did you just say? Palm Springs. Just yesterday there was a last-minute flight cancellation, and we got a super cheap deal. So we're at the Palm Springs hot springs right now, my husband spoke cheerfully. Yesterday? Today is Rachel's wedding, isn't it? It's Saturday today, right? We'll be in Palm Springs until Monday. We've got the day off, he said. Who's there with you? Dad, Mom, and Mark. That Monday off was supposed to be for seeing off Rachel's in-laws. They live far away and came here for the wedding. We couldn't meet them before the wedding, so we planned to have lunch together and properly greet them afterward. You knew it was happening today and still went to Palm Springs. It was such a good deal for the flight, and Mark wanted to go to Palm Springs, so we just had to, right? Right, Mark? Hearing my husband's words, Rachel sighed deeply. Never mind, she said, then looked up at the sky. Since I had the phone on speaker, the surrounding staff could hear the conversation and started to murmur, realizing the situation. If they were in Palm Springs now, there was no way they could make it to the wedding in time. Rachel asked the nearby attendant to call the wedding planner. She likely informed them of her family's absence. How troubling it must be for the bride to deal with this right before her wedding. You must be envious, right? We're having a family trip in Palm Springs, my husband said excitedly, with Mark laughing in the background. It was clear whom he considered family. Rachel and I were evidently not part of that. I felt something snap inside me. I see. Have fun then, I said, and with that, I immediately ended the call. This is unreasonable. I was at a loss for words. Astonishment, disappointment, and emptiness. Emotions kept rising and fading away. Mom, we're going to start the ceremony now, Rachel said, just like that, with the family seats empty. It's okay. It's not like we didn't expect this. Leave it to me, she said, smiling radiantly in her dress. I felt apologetic yet incredibly proud of her. Rachel is my pride. In the end, the ceremony and reception proceeded without the bride's brother, father, and paternal grandparents present. There were moments of unrest among the groom's side and guests when they realized it, but the main couple continued with happy smiles. Next, we have a letter from the bride, Rachel announced as the host. The lights dimmed and a spotlight shone on Rachel. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend our wedding today. Standing in front of the microphone, Rachel began to speak in a well-defined voice. She held the letter in her hand and looked forward. First, I must address the empty seats on my family's side. I deeply apologize for the absence of my father, brother, and paternal grandparents. It's a great disrespect, and I'm truly sorry, she said, bowing, and the venue fell silent. Those close to me know this, but I've grown up unacknowledged by them. I did hand them the invitations and received their RSVPs, but they went to Palm Springs yesterday. They told me just before the wedding that they'd be enjoying their Monday off, she revealed. Stirring the crowd, it was indeed hard to believe. It pained me to have Rachel disclose this on her big day. However, this wasn't unexpected for me, and I saw it as a chance to share the truth with you all. It's clear who's being unreasonable, isn't it? Rachel's mischievous comment drew a small laugh from the audience. The air in the venue seemed to soften a bit at the sight of her cute appearance. I was filled with admiration for my daughter, who could express her feelings so boldly and influence the atmosphere of the venue. She had grown into a strong woman, unaffected by her father and grandparents' presence. They always looked down on me and my mother, treating us coldly. As a child, it hurt, but my mother always stood up for me, Rachel said, looking at me. In trying to protect her, I realized she was also protecting me. Having Rachel by my side was what kept me going. I'm sorry for the long introduction. Now I'd like to read the letter I've prepared. It was finished yesterday, and I intended to read it with everyone present. Please keep that in mind as you listen, she said, opening the letter. Beside Rachel stood her husband, gazing at her tenderly. She began reading the letter slowly, her voice echoing in the venue. After expressing gratitude to the guests and joy at being married, she paused before continuing. I've written here the thanks I don't often get to say out loud. Mom, I've always seen you busy with work and household chores since I was a child. You've always been there for me, and I've never felt lonely. You cooked nutritious and delicious meals, and I could talk to you about makeup and fashion. You're the most reliable and admirable woman I know, she expressed emotionally. Before I was even aware, my paternal grandparents and dad often said I should have been born a boy or at least be useful to my elder brother. But you always hugged me tight, saying, Rachel is my treasure. Let's find many things we love and enjoy our time together. Despite how harshly Grandma and the others treated you, you always smiled to protect me. I'm truly grateful and respect you for that, thanks to your love. No matter what terrible things my paternal grandparents, dad, and brother said, or did I could remember joy and kindness, thank you. Truly no amount of thanks can express how much I love and appreciate you. From now on, I'll protect you too. I'll return the love you gave me with even more affection. You were always my family. Now that I'm married, my family will grow. Let's enjoy and be happy together," Mom Rachel said, smiling at me. Tears welled up in my eyes at her radiant look. She had grown into such a kind person, and I couldn't be more grateful. Rachel expressed her gratitude. But she was also my strength. I hope she finds immense happiness with her husband and future children, expanding her cherished family. That's the best way she could return my love. As Rachel finished reading, prolonged applause filled the venue. The wedding was reaching its climax, with only the final farewell left to do. The bride and groom, along with their parents, were the first to leave the venue for the send-off. "Mom, how was the letter?" Rachel asked as we positioned ourselves, following the staff's directions. "I was so happy. I've gained another treasure," I replied. I put all my true feelings into it." "Thank you, you're welcome. I was thinking of reading it in front of those who didn't come today." "Yes, it is first." Rachel mentioned that letter was written on the assumption that the husband and others would be present. What would have happened if they had been there? I had already told his parents everything beforehand. I thought something might happen, so I planned to read this letter from the start. Through Rachel and her husband, I saw their parents smiling at me. "It must have been tough. Please let us know if there's anything we can do." Through Rachel or directly, the kind words made my heart warm up. I had never expected to be understood in this way. I was so busy with work in the house that I was just trying to get through the days when I was suffocating. I was so focused on protecting Rachel and not giving in to unreasonableness that I didn't even think about changing the situation or asking for help. Maybe the world was kinder than I thought. A realization Rachel brought to me. "Thank you." I felt truly blessed as a mother during the send-off. Many guests expressed dissatisfaction with my husband, and the in-laws, especially Rachel's friends, said well done, and some of them even shed tears of praise for Rachel. Apparently, she had told her longtime friends about her family situation, and they were sympathetic to Rachel's suffering. They were prepared to join Rachel if anything should happen during the reception. Rachel is very lucky to be surrounded by such wonderful friends, and everyone has been so supportive and encouraging to me. As well, I was impressed by the fact that almost no one reacted, despite the fact that I had revealed a scandalous family relationship in a certain sense. They are all nice people. It must be Rachel and her husband's personality that attracts good people. Rachel is a source of pride, and I'm grateful for her wonderful husband. The wedding turned out to be incredibly happy for me as well. I'm truly thankful to Rachel. What did you say to the manager after Rachel's wedding and bidding farewell to her in-laws on Monday? "My husband called me. His first words were as above." "What are you talking about? Why are Mark and I on house arrest?" "He seemed furious, but there was no way I was responsible for whatever house arrest." He was referring to just more of his accusations and outbursts, though I had heard something about it from the manager. "Didn't the manager tell you? Why did you have to snitch on us? We invited him to the wedding, so there's no snitching involved." Why did you invite him? "The manager is our neighbor, and his wife is always helpful. Plus, his youngest daughter is Rachel Sr., so it's not strange at all. The manager of my husband and son's company lived nearby, unbeknownst to my husband, who neglected household responsibilities. The manager and his wife were actively involved in community work, giving me frequent opportunities to speak with them. Moreover, Rachel had decided to invite the manager and his wife to the wedding. Now I understood it was also to expose my husband and son's true nature during the wedding. Send off. The manager was furious with my husband and son. He said that he knew what he had done to me and my daughter so far, and of course he made a blanket statement that it was impossible for him not to come to the wedding and to be in Palm Springs, and that he would report this matter to the president. Apparently my husband and son do not have a good reputation. Even within the company, it is said to be at the level of a rumor, but I have heard that they disbar the opinions of female employees at meetings and that they are irreverent and say unreasonable things to women. However, no formal reports or protests have been raised. It's all smoke and no fire. but the reality of the situation has not been revealed. One possibility is that the fire is being controlled by some kind of pressure. In my husband's position, he would be able to put out the fire by flirting with power or exerpressure, especially if he is dealing with employees younger than himself. He is the kind of person who would do that. In my opinion, the general manager seems to have realized that this is a problem with their human nature. Even the son of a layman could be a serious matter, but my husband has subordinates. It would seem that a person who is in a position to organize people cannot be overlooked if he is acting in a way that is contrary to the times. According to the general manager, the president of the company has publicly stated that he will never tolerate any disrespect based on personality or gender, and that some sort of disciplinary action would be taken against the husband and son. What are we going to do now you've made your bed? Who do you think you are talking to? You, obviously. However, here are you now? Just got off the plane, and now with the manager's call, I can't even get home. Based on his comment, it would take them about an hour to reach home. I was glad I had packed my belongings. Rachel has moved to her new place, and I'm going back to my parents. To your parents. The divorce papers are on the table. Please sign them. What a lawyer will contact you later. Please cooperate. Hey, I hung up before he could finish. Rachel had taken the initiative, exposing the in-laws and my husband's misdeeds. I was done tolerating them. I would live freely and happily from now on. Later, the manager's wife contacted me. I learned the company investigation confirmed my husband and son's discriminatory behavior towards women. The CEO, informed about the wedding incident, stated, "I cannot trust someone who doesn't value family," leading to my husband and son's demotion and pay cut. Their downfall was entirely self-inflicted. Shortly after the disciplinary action, my husband called me again, blaming us for his troubles. "You guys got us into a lot of trouble again." He takes it out on me for shifting the blame. It's so uninspiring that I'm getting fed up with it. I'm telling you, you brought this on yourself. But more importantly, did you agree to the divorce? I never said I was divorcing you. I had expected my husband to be a goner like this. Both my parents-in-law and my husband are the type of people who are concerned about their appearance in the world. They try to hide things that are not good for their appearance, and they are even willing to tell lies in order to do so. But in this case, I think it's useless because the general manager's wife told me that what happened at Rachel's wedding had already spread around the neighborhood. I'll ask for a lawyer, and not getting a divorce isn't an option, and I'll have you pay alimony too. Alimony? Why, you've caused me years of mental anguish. I don't have that kind of money even with a job. My husband has been responsible for the household finances, with him paying for the house and me paying for food and other living expenses. I had no idea how much money he had saved, but I assumed that he must have received a good salary and that we had been working as a team, and that there was no way he could not afford to pay the bills. Apparently, they are spending as much as they can, such as buying a new car for their son, buying expensive suits, and taking the in-laws on a trip. I see he wants to rely on my earnings, so he doesn't want to divorce me even more. That's ridiculous, and reconsider the divorce. Okay, don't call me. That's creepy, I snapped. What? I'm definitely getting a divorce, and I'll get the alimony. Be prepared. I warned before ending the call. The divorce eventually went through smoothly, and I received the alimony. After conveying through the lawyer that I was ready to take the matter to court, a mutual divorce agreement was quickly reached. He probably wanted to avoid the scandal of a trial. My husband and son, feeling unwelcome at the company, eventually resigned. My husband, now juggling multiple part-time jobs to cover living expenses and alimony, reached his financial limits, and along with Mark, moved back in with his parents after putting their house on the market. Their excessive indulgence left Mark, a once pampered son with high pride, unemployed and withdrawn. My in-laws were devastated by their downfall. Their misery was entirely self-made. Rachel is now pregnant, soon entering her final month. I'm looking forward to the day my grandchild is born. Her child is a boy, but she has made it clear that she won't let my husband and his family know or meet the baby. They have reaped what they sowed. As for me, after staying with my parents initially, I'm now living independently in an apartment close to my work. With newfound freedom, I've been going to the gym and enjoying visits from Rachel and her husband. My life is fulfilling, filled with joy every day. There's still so much happiness ahead in my journey. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment.